This is a show about getting spooked for fun, and neither one of the hosts are associated with the attractions discussed in any way, except for those skeletons in Devin's closet. Some topics may go from ghoulish to ghastly, so viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to the Great American Scream.
I want everyone to imagine that this is like very sexy elevator music that I'm doing. This is where you want to start from.
Pause the podcast.
No.
What elevator have you ever been in where the adjective you would choose to describe the music is sexy?
By sexy, I mean good. That's
okay.
That's what that means. Sexy just means good.
I want that crocheted on a pillow.
Hi, welcome to the Great American Scream. My name is Adam O'Connell.
My name is sexy morning radio voice, Devin Wright.
Ooh, see?
Ooh.
Sexy.
It's very early. Yes, but sexy just means good.
This will be our sexiest episode yet since Vampires.
Sure.
Hey, everybody. First off, before we
Hello.
get cracking today, I want to thank everybody who came and hung out at our live stream. I guess
Oh my God, it was
Tuesday,
so much fun.
It'll be 4 days ago.
Last Friday.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I had a total blast. I hope you all had fun. It was great seeing y'all in the chat. Thank you again to Casper and Brucker for coming on for our horror trivia show. I think that was a ton of fun. And if you didn't catch the live stream, you can still watch it on Twitch TV/DLaw, DEELAW. I went back and I saw that a fair amount of people have already gone back and watched it. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please enjoy it. It was a lot of fun, and we were so happy to see everybody, and we hope we can do something like that again sometime.
Yeah.
But so anybody who joined us for our first hour of that live stream got to sit along and watch with us a very spooky analog horror playlist that I curated with some really like heavy hitters in the analog horror genre.
It was a solid playlist.
It was really good, and we've talked about analog horror in the past. I think in the YouTube horror or the internet horror series, we talked about Local 58, a couple other elements of analog horror. But I'd really like to dive into the genre as a whole today because so it's a fairly new genre. It's really only appeared and kind of grown in popularity in like the last 5-ish years, especially and pretty much exclusively on YouTube. And Local 58 is kind of what launched it in popularity, but there is barely scratching the surface of the literal hours upon hours upon hours of analog horror content that is on YouTube, Local 58, Analog Archives, Channel 7, the Minerva Alliance, Gemini Home Entertainment. There's so many. Eventide Media Center. There's so many.
I really like. I like the fact that it's it's kind of centered on YouTube. That makes a lot of sense. We'll probably talk about it just because YouTube is a place where you can fall down holes and like find random home videos from a guy named Glenn from 2007. But I'd like to see them branch out and start doing analog horror on Vimeo and stuff. Because like something about Vimeo is kind of eldritchly horrifying.
Okay.
In a way that YouTube is not. Maybe they could. I think they should branch out.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. But I think any kind of internet streaming or video platform is kind of the best medium for these, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But
yeah, Quibi.
First, before that, I want to talk about how we kind of got to the genre of analog horror, because it kind of sprung up out of nowhere. Like, not totally out of nowhere, but like,
yeah,
it wasn't like a modern, like, when we talk about kind of like modern horror film genres, like, we start with the monster film and then the alien, and then we moved on to slashers. One day we just kind of had analog horror, but it does have its roots in other genres.
Yeah. It seems like you can draw a line if you're looking for it, but if you're not, it just seems like we ended up like it just kind of ended up fully formed right in front of us.
Yeah. And very good. Like, we didn't get to see bad analog horror. We just
very good. There's no such
good
thing.
Ones. And this is truly the like genre, one of the few genres of horror that like actively gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like nothing, like not to say that other horror films don't scare me, but like these are the ones that sit with me. That like I'll be scared while I'm watching a horror movie, and then after that I'll be fine. When I watch a scary analog horror video, I think about it for like days afterwards. Like the first time that I saw the Mr. Know-It-Alls Game Show Spectacular, for like 4 days after, I was so freaked out.
I enjoyed watching them with you because you got really skeeved out. I think that analog horror is the one form of horror that I can watch and just thoroughly enjoy. Like for me, they are just like I don't like. We've talked about this before. The reason that I didn't like horror as a kid was like it genuinely frightened me to the point where like I couldn't sleep at night. And like now, nothing really scares me that way, but I find it hard to enjoy some horror stuff. Analog horror, I'm just like, are they going to do this? Oh, I would love if they did this. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's so much fun.
Yeah. And while I was researching for this episode, I had to research. Usually I just sit down one afternoon and do a big like 2 to 3 hour research.
For this, you had to like, turn on all of the lights. It had to be noon. You had your brother Chris in the room. I split this into
chunks because I watched it on my TV too. I was like the full experience.
What?
So I would like pull up YouTube on the TV. I would pull up YouTube on my TV and watch it there, and I could only watch like 2 to 3 videos at a time before I had to like turn it off and go do something else. Thank God the Muppet Show came out on Disney Plus this week, because that's what I've been splitting it up with. It's been like analog Muppet Show, analog Muppet Show. So let's go back. First of all, to say like, how are we defining analog horror? Because to folks who are like already kind of seasoned in horror on YouTube, this might be very familiar to you, but people who aren't, this genre doesn't really exist in film yet.
Right.
So because it's such a new genre, so this is a totally fair question. I like to think of analog horror as a subgenre of found footage. And that's where it has a lot of its roots, because technically it's specifically, of course, analog found footage. So something on a VHS or a cable access news network. And like for specification, analog refers to the way that radio and picture signals are transmitted. The opposite of analog would be digital. And analog will usually refer to stuff like TV broadcasts, VHS and stuff. It's something like the waves are shaped a different way. So what am I? What am I, a scientist? I don't know.
Not that this factors into the horror at all. No. But digital can only be 0 and 1, and analog can be something between that. So like digital sounds back in the day would just be like beep, 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 but analog sounds would be like, you know? Yeah,
the analog waves are wavy, and then the digital ones are like
they're like square waves.
Anyway, yeah, that's not important. But
it literally doesn't matter at all. But the
fun fact
thing that I think like analog horror is a great name for it. It's not necessarily a descriptive name for it. Like the reason, like you said, found footage is such a perfect idea for it, because it does show up on YouTube alongside Glenn's home videos from 2007, random news broadcasts from like 2011. And the thing about analog is it doesn't, back in the day, TV things would air once, and it would be just transmitted to your television and you would watch it and that would be it. And the only way we could watch them again is if somebody taped them onto a lower fidelity platform like a VHS or a Betamax, whatever the hell. So like that lowering of quality of the actual video makes it so that like I said this during the stream, it lowers the bar for suspension of disbelief, where like you don't need to buy in as much to like, you know, not photorealistic effects or whatever, because you're watching a VHS.
Yeah. And also that way it kind of like a lot of analog horror videos have these like distortion effects and stuff. And I think in a lot of like non-analog horror content and media, then like those distortions could feel kind of like shoot in just because like, ooh, it's scary because it's distorted. But like in analog horror, there's an actual reason. It's because when you would have taped it back, it would have been distorted because you probably
did you ever try to... That's the most horrifying part of analog horror, is having to interface with a VHS recorder.
Yeah. And I think about it as a subgenre of found footage because of that too. And also that calling it analog horror is so weird because it doesn't act, like you said, doesn't actually say anything about the content. Just it's like calling it's like calling it film horror, like the genre of horror films, calling it film horror.
Yeah, I think it's more akin. The idea is that the analogness of it is a defining aspect of the like mood, in the same way that like psychological horror is about the mood. Like, and you have it in the outline, but I think a good way to make people think about the difference between analog and other types of like short form horror is digital horror, which is like when the internet was, when the internet was hitting its stride in 2008, and everybody was on this Facebook, there was a bunch of digital horror where it was like, ooh, the internet's coming to kill you. Shove your hand into a blender like an Unfriended.
Yeah.
And then now that we're in this like weird but incredible, like, let's return to retro tech time, we're getting analog horror.
Yeah, that's the question that I like had posed too, that like as soon as the digital age was upon us, we warmed right up to digital horror. But like,
because it's terrifying.
We weren't doing analog horror in the 80s. We're doing analog horror now. And that's because like we've had a cultural resurgence of a lot of kind of 80s pop
and I'm
culture
gonna put forward a hypothesis.
Okay.
So digital came around and everybody was terrified right away because it's terrifying and we're gonna live in a techno dystopia pretty dang soon. But the reason that analog was not considered horrifying was because the people making a bunch of this horror art were people who grew up with analog. So they were like, oh, that's not scary. That's nostalgic. I love that stuff. Digital is new and scary. Ugh, progressivism. And now that like at least young millennials are the ones making content, now they're like, oh, digital's a thing we kind of grew up with. Yeah, sure, it can be scary. But let's talk about the weird stuff y'all did back in the 80s.
Yeah,
70s.
and I think that's why, like, because the generation of people that are using YouTube and consuming this content are that age group.
Right.
And even
there's nothing more terrifying to an 8-year-old kid than a VHS tape. You show them that and they go, what is that?
Even the slightly older crowd, we always talk about how what makes horror really scary on the show is breaking expectations. So when you see a form that you are comfortable with, something like analog, something like you'd watch on a VHS, and then to see that messed with is always going to be scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And seeing the kind of effects that we associate with modern horror used in like a VHS thing, and you're like, oh, is that thing moving? What the heck? This is a VHS tape.
Yeah. And so like when we say analog horror, we're really not only referring to this medium that's presented in, but also like most commonly we're going to have themes of cosmic horror, eldritch horror, and psychological horror in most analog horror. That's kind of the genre it tends to fall into.
Yeah.
We get some variation, but that's tends to be where it lives. And analog horror is also what I think makes it so effective with both the combination of the media and the genre of horror they choose to do, is that in contrast to most like found footage, the analog horror videos are presented in second person. We don't have characters in analog horror. We don't have a protagonist. We're not watching somebody. People. Yeah, we're not watching somebody else watch this tape. We are the protagonist. We are the person watching this tape.
Right. We are, but like, and often they are, because they are PSAs or news broadcasts or whatever, you're being shown something that was meant to be shown to someone, but not to you.
Yeah.
Which is like scary.
And I think that's the biggest difference between like analog horror and stuff like The Ring. Because The Ring is probably the closest we get in film to analog horror.
Yeah,
maybe
you're not meant to identify. You don't have anybody to identify with.
Yeah, exactly. You don't, because when you watch The Ring, you're watching other people go through this. When you watch an analog horror video, you are going through this.
You were the Ring. The real Ring was the friends we made along the way.
It removes the safety of another character experiencing it,
sure.
And like you become the protagonist of it. So there's a couple of other kind of like, now that we've kind of defined it and talked about what it is now, I think besides found footage, the other, and just kind of like nostalgia in the analog medium, one of the other biggest influences for analog horror are broadcast interruptions. I don't want to talk too much about found footage because it will get its own episode in the future. But just like very quick points, obviously the connections are there. And then analog horror on YouTube takes the like this could be real aspect of found footage and takes it even further by removing characters, removing protagonists, removing you watching it in the theater. Most of the time, removing credits. A lot of analog horror videos do have credits, which is nice.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in the past. I think that it is a bit unethical to not include credits at the end, just because like kids can be watching, and it's kind of. I consider it kind of wrong to not, and I think that the fact that most analog horror ends with "this has ended, here are the credits, I made this, I hope you enjoyed," is very cool. Like it adds to it because it I don't know, it creates a sense of like community and like art making that is like really neat.
Yeah, and I think that's what separates it too from creepypasta. Because honestly, I think the biggest difference between like analog horror and creepypasta is credits. Creepypasta, they don't include the credits
really
because you are meant to take this as fact. You are meant to look at this and think that this could be real. And analog horror, they don't really try and do that. But most of the time, the horror is so effective that you can't help but feel like this might be real.
Right. And it really starts to feel like it is just an art form where people are showing each other what they can do and what they thought of. And that's so interesting. It's kind of a inversion of the idea that like creepypasta takes itself, quote unquote, too seriously, but then analog horror takes it a step further and goes, no, we are actually taking ourselves seriously. This is not just weird internet horror. It is art that we're making, which is so cool.
And but so with putting found footage aside, I do want to talk about broadcast interruptions because this is kind of the form that a lot of analog horror narratives take of like,
if you've ever experienced a weather broadcast interruption and it went
yeah,
you have experienced analog horror.
And like the emergency alert system too, before we even get into broadcast interruption. Well, I mean, the emergency alert system is a broadcast interruption. Yeah. Like that sound is so ingrained. Like the fact that so much analog horror uses that, it's no coincidence because like we were raised to fear that sound. That sound means that there is an emergency.
Yeah, it was the modern day like nuclear war siren.
Yeah.
Like where we were so afraid of it, but at some point it became so just normal. Like you questioned whether this was real, but I feel like at least in Orange County where I grew up, it was like a weekly thing at like Wednesday at noon. They would do a test of it.
See, I feel like ours was like, well, also, so I grew up around Indian Point. So every like twice a month, we would get the practice siren. They would test the warning sirens. Yep. Nobody ever told us when that was happening though. So we'd all stand out on our porches.
I should have had
my
like, dad let you guys know.
We would all stand out on our porch and be like, should we do something about this? What do we do about this? I remember it happened while I was like at home with my brother and sister and there were no cars because my parents were at work. And we heard it go off and I kind of stood outside for a little bit and I was like, if this is real, I have no game plan.
I do. That's another thing that I just love about upstate New York. We had like, you know, a very effective and good nuclear power plant. It was like, again, my dad worked there. Very safe place. Provided like 20% of the power to New York City. Great place. It didn't seem like we were ever prepared for a kind of 3 Mile Island-esque scenario. I don't feel like anybody had shelters or anything.
I was told we should definitely do something, but nobody told me exactly what.
Nobody was quite clear about what we should do about this nuclear power plant on the Hudson River. Yeah. What we should do about it.
Yeah, if it started to melt.
The true analog horror.
Yeah. I digress. It's no coincidence that so much analog horror uses those kind of emergency alert system sounds. But so besides EAS systems, they also take the form of just like broadcast hijacks or like something is interrupting the signal of what you would usually be watching. Local 58 does this a lot.
Yeah. And often because, and we've talked about this before, breaking expectations and also playing with authority, because what a lot of Local 58 does is it will have a broadcast interruption that's like, we're sorry to interrupt your broadcast, but this bad thing is happening. Mm-hmm. And then something else will come in and use the same exact method, but say that message was false, don't listen to it. And so you don't know which one is the actual government and which one is the spooky alien monster. And that is, I think that's really interesting because I don't think we have ever had this in our time growing up, but I'm sure it's so obvious to people a little bit older than us, the broadcast interruption for 9/11 or the broadcast interruption for like Princess Diana dying.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's such an authority to those messages that playing with that authority is not only super spooky, but so intelligent. This show has just become us talking about something and me being like, that's so cool, man.
So good.
The whole thing.
Yeah, I know. I'm also like sidetracked, but like my roommate is out of town this week, so I'm by myself all week, and I'm trying not to watch anything scary, but I can't help it because I think scary stuff is so cool. Then I scare myself, and I'm by myself in my apartment that I've lived in for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to talk about these broadcast interruptions because I think this is the only time on the show when I'm actually going to be able to talk about some of these. Because I do think a lot of the elements that we see in these actual for real recorded broadcast interruptions inspire what we see in analog horror.
Yeah. And I'm so excited for these because these are the coolest things ever.
Yeah. So
the idea of being like a pirate radio station that like breaks into a news station and broadcasts that you're like Lord Zebular or whatever. That's so
that's
cool.
basically what this first one, the Southern Television Broadcast Interruption, is. This happened on November 26, 1977 in parts of southern England. This is cited as one of the first broadcast interruptions. And I'll say that like broadcast interruptions aren't always like people trying to do scary stuff. A lot of the times it's for protest. Sometimes people just put porn on.
Sometimes it's just porn in this one.
But no, these are all ones where I think it was meant to either freak people out or whatever. This one, November 26, 1977, at about 5:10 in the evening, so primetime TV, a news summary was interrupted by a distorted voice delivering a message for about 6 minutes. The voice introduced themselves as Vrillon, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command. Vrillon warned of an upcoming Great Awakening and encouraged that humans put down their weapons of war and prepare for the new age of Aquarius, which we just entered, right? The new age of Aquarius?
Let me Google it.
I think we did. So I remember when 2021 started, around New Year's, they were like, oh, it's the new age of Aquarius.
Sure. It's very long, lasting 2,160 years. So the Earth is tilted at an angle of 23.5 degrees. And it is always rotating around on that axis very slowly. And apparently that we've just like passed the point where we're now like pointing towards Aquarius rather than the other one.
Got it.
That's sick, dude. Maybe they were talking about this year. They just got a bit off.
Yeah.
Maybe Vrillon was just a little early.
And he ended the message with, have no fear, seek only to know yourselves and live in harmony with the ways of your planet Earth. We here at the Ashtar Galactic Command thank you for your attention. We are now leaving the planes of your existence. May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos, which is beautiful. But if I was watching the news one evening and this happened, I would poop my pants. Like, even if there's part of my brain that knows that this is fake, that there's no way this is real, I would still be terrified.
If I was in England in 1977, I would simply seek to know myself and live in harmony with the ways of my planet Earth. Rip to these guys, but I'm different. My question is, what did the voice of Vrillon, the representative of the Ashtar Galactic Republic, have a British accent?
No. From what I'm remembering of the tape, he kind of spoke in like what do we call like the acting, like the neutral?
Was it neutral American?
No, it was kind of something between neutral American and neutral
Was
English.
it mid-Atlantic? Was this person like,
no,
have no fear.
No.
Seek only to know yourself.
I'll send you the tape later.
Okay.
Or we can even play a clip of it. If whatever.
Sure, here's the clip now.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years, you have seen us as lights in the darkness.
What a great clip.
So the person behind this was never identified. They never caught who did this. They never caught Vrillon.
Well, that's because he left.
Yeah, because he left our plane of existence. But again, like, of course, this is like you watching this and you're like, oh, this is a prank. But also, like, cable TV is such like, I don't want to call it a safe place, but at the time it was like, I watch the news. This is news time. This is the time when the news comes in. And then suddenly something else happens.
And that's why it's so interesting that this is popped back up now, because it basically invites people our age to step back into a time when the only media you watched was the television or the radio, and the idea that that would be interrupted.
Yeah.
And obviously there is like a really interesting, like there's a political paper to be written about this, about like the inherent conservativeness of like the authority of one type of media and how that could have influenced people, and that being taken and intruded upon. Like, I wish we were still in that time so that people with political views like mine could like protest via taking over a local radio station. That's so sick.
Yeah. I also want to talk about the Max Headroom incident, probably the most infamous.
I went to high school with him, I think.
Max Headroom? Do you know who Max Headroom is?
No, I've never heard. I just heard the name and I thought it was a funny joke that people make.
He's okay. So the Max Headroom incident is probably the most famous broadcast interruption. Max Headroom, the character, was like this British AI, like,
I don't like him.
It was kind of an early Hatsune Miku situation. I don't like how much we talk about. We talk about Hatsune Miku a lot on this show, but this was kind of an early Hatsune Miku situation where he was an AI.
Max Headroom walked so that Hatsune Miku could run.
But like come
at me.
When he was in commercials and like TV spots, he was played by a person in like prosthetics. They would just use the audio from this AI. And he became like a very popular.
This guy.
Yeah, he's very.
He
cool.
looks like Bowser from the live action Mario movie.
Look like Bowser from the live action Mario movie. So like he became a very popular like Halloween costume and stuff at the time. So this happened on November 22nd, 1987. Where the almost exactly 10 years after the Verlon thing, when the broadcast...
Max Headroom is in on it.
The broadcast of 2 TV stations in Chicago was interrupted by distorted footage and audio of a man in a Max Headroom mask and costume. And he had this kind of like background behind him to try and mimic the background of what the Max Headroom commercials would look like. So he started talking in this distorted voice and making jokes. He was swearing up a storm. He did, Max Headroom did a Coke commercial at one time. So he did like the Coke commercial and he went like, taste the wave with the Coke bottle up.
Taste the wave. Is it Sean Connery? What was that voice?
I don't know.
Taste the wave.
And then at one point, like it just cut to his bare ass being hit by a fly swatter by some off-camera woman. And again, the culprits behind the Max Headroom incident were never caught.
And that's a big deal because the FCC fines for all the swearing in the butt were really... They need that money.
I feel like this one's not as like traditionally scary, but would still be scary if you were like you look back and watch the Max Headroom incident. Like this is very funny, but if you're watching it happen at the time, it would be scary.
If you're a mother who has pearls to clutch, this is a very terrifying situation.
And then the last broadcast interruption that I want to talk about, and this one is kind of, I think, the most straightforward. This was meant to scare people. One was the Montana zombie emergency alert system hack. So on February 11th, 2013. So technically this is an analog. This would be digital. Well, I mean, it was a hack of the emergency alert system. So I guess it was technically
right.
Still
it would still be analog. Yeah.
So a news station in Great Falls, Montana had their emergency alert system hijacked with a spoken message warning viewers that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. And the hijacker went on to hijack several stations in the area, broadcasting the same message, but this hijacker was caught and arrested. And again, would probably poop my pants if I heard this over the legitimate emergency alert system, despite any semblance of rationality of this can't be real. Like, if I am used to hearing, like, think of the emergency alert system that you are used to hearing where you are from. If you heard that just in the middle of the day broadcasting this message, like...
I really like the idea of, I guess, 15-year-old us going like, yeah, this is how they would announce the zombie apocalypse.
How else would they announce it?
Adam, I don't know, but I do.
Like,
what? Like, Like, in my mind, the real stuff is that they would be like, there's been a disturbance in Montana. Nobody go there. We're handling it.
I guess,
let Montana die. That sucks for Montana specifically. Nobody, like, Montana seems like a lovely place. And this person wanted to spook a bunch of Montanans. That's not okay.
So yeah, I think a lot of analog horror takes inspiration from things like broadcast interruptions, especially with them getting uploaded to YouTube. And I think analog horror also works really well for YouTube because YouTube is meant for short form content. And by short, I know YouTube videos can get long, but by short form, I mean shorter than a short film.
Right.
And when most of your narratives are from a second person perspective, like an analog horror, it's kind of gotta be short form. It's kind of gotta be snappy because you can't really.
You run the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't keep a grip on second person for too long before we start to go like, wait a minute, or we start to lose interest, or we start to lose us.
And most short form, most horror is that way.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of horror films that fail because they just, maybe their concept was not intriguing enough to hold you for that long.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, found footage finds its way onto YouTube horror with series like Marble Hornets, which I think was another kind of big early route for analog horror, this series. But before, as kind of our last chunko here, I would like to talk about some of the most famous examples from YouTube, including some of the stuff that we watch in the live stream. This is by no means a comprehensive list. There's literally, I've probably years of hours of analog horror content on YouTube. These are just kind of like the big wigs. These are kind of the ones that people are most familiar with.
Right. This is the exact genre for like you to just fall down a hole and find a bunch of, again, the reason that I'm kind of obsessed with this genre is you can very easily fall down a hole where you find really compelling small YouTube channels who are doing this. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah. I'm doing it really well. So we'll talk about Local 58 first, because I think it's the one that people are most familiar with.
My husband and yours,
Chris Straub. This was not the first analog horror series on YouTube, although people cite it as such. I think it was predated by a couple of channels, but I think this is kind of the one that made the genre explode. And we've talked about it on the show before, so I will be brief, but it is an analog horror anthology series created by Chris Straub, who is also known for creating the Candle Cove creepypasta, which is a creepypasta about analog horror. Like, it's not the video, but it's about it. So the series follows a public access channel in Mason County, West Virginia, which keeps getting some strange broadcast interruptions. Some of them are interruptions. Some of them are just deliberately broadcasted onto this public access channel.
Yeah.
It has no general overarching plot, although there are some continuous references to something sinister going on with the moon, or the moon being dangerous, and also an organization called the Thought Research Initiative. And honestly, I think the lack of an overarching plot really works in Local 58's favor. I think analog horror loses some of its scariness and some of its believability when it has this overarching plot. Or when they try and connect it to an expanded universe.
Right. It's a hard line to walk. I think we will eventually do an episode. You know, I'm very proud of myself for basically having a little list of Devin's episodes where I get to do work, so that you're not doing everything. I mean, I edit the
anyway. You do edit the show.
But I think we should do an episode on the specific brand of expansive, usually video games, but just internet related horror, where the enjoyment for a lot of fans is trying to like connect everything in a perfectly satisfying way, which in a lot of instances actually tends to castrate the horror from the property.
And I think we want this because of things like Marvel and Star Wars.
Right.
And
auteur theory.
Yeah. And this is like my own personal thing, but I don't like it when you can't enjoy part of it without knowing the lore of everything, which is why I think Local 58 really works. You can take any Local 58 video. You don't have to watch it in a certain order.
Right.
You can just take any and you don't need context and just go for it.
Right. And there being enough there to pull on and theorize and talk about it with friends or whatever is very cool. I just think it becomes a problem when like people start to believe that there are answers.
Yeah.
You know?
And I say this as a person who once DM'd a RPG campaign based off of Local 58. So do take my opinion with a grain of salt, because that's pretty much the antithesis of that.
Yeah, and I'm a pretentious asshole. So take all of my opinions with a grain of salt.
We've already talked about some of the most famous entries, like contingency, or on the fastest available route, weather service. We talked about those are kind of the big three. During our live stream, we watched Real Sleep and Show for Children. I love both of these a lot. I love Show for Children from like a technical standpoint, because it switches up the analog format to give us a fully animated one. And it's still animation being broadcast on this cable network, but it is almost fully animated.
Yeah, I really enjoy what one of the ones we'll talk about later does this as well. One of the things that is really effective and kind of makes analog horror accessible to newer artists or artists who may not have the exact skill they want to have is how analog allows you to do quote unquote easier, but really just more simplistic or simpler types of animation or effect that, because of the format, actually enhances the horror. So having like simple animations that look like they're from a PBS show from the 1970s is so freaking cool. One of these videos looks like, I said, like an FMV game from like 1996, which is just like such a specific visual style that I'm sure was so much fun to create. And actually, by being this like quote unquote less modern, less polished video effect, actually makes the art better. Yeah. Which is so cool.
And then I loved Real Sleep as well that we watched.
So good.
Somebody brought it up during our live stream that a lot of these analog horror videos have slow burns. And this one does without a doubt. Like we always kind of know something is off with this sleep training tape that we are watching, but it doesn't really dive into the full horror of it until about the last 2 minutes. And even then, what I really love about Local 58 is it never fully breaks the believability. It never does kind of like the complete, like we never see I think in You Are the Fastest Available Route, we see a monster for like 0.4 seconds, but it never goes beyond the point of I could see this on TV.
Right. There's usually You Are on the Fastest Available Route. I think in our episode, I cited that as like a moment that I think it fell for me. But like the ability to just kind of walk that line again of like not showing the end point the way a TV show or a movie would, but also the incredible power of having a short form video that is a slow burn. Like that shouldn't be possible. But this 3-minute video, because it takes 2 minutes to get there, feels like it's 20 minutes long. And that's so interesting. It feels like a like compacted version of Midsummer, where you know something's wrong the whole time. And that's another benefit of being on a place like YouTube, where you see the title, you know it's an analog horror video, you have context going in, so you are expecting to be scared, which is another breaking expectations thing.
Yeah. Another channel I want to talk about is the Minerva Alliance. This is another anthology
great name,
series. By the way. By a company called Quarks and Rec. It is sort of
great name also.
The Minerva Alliance itself is like, it's a fictional company presenting us these videos, and they're an organization dedicated to revealing the existence of anomalies around the world that the governments are trying to hide. It's like a reverse SCP Foundation. Instead of trying to keep them a secret, they're trying to out these monsters. Although not quite monsters, because it is often implied that the videos themselves are the anomalies. Like we're just watching the library of these anomalies. Like that one, the Reagan SCP, that the video itself is the anomaly.
Right, is the,
this is the channel where Mr. Know-It-All's Game Show Spectacular and Unusual EAS Alert are from. That's the Arthur emergency alert system one. Like I said before, Mr. Know-It-All's really gives me the creep. I think it's the lack of voiceover that does it for me. The fact that I can't look away because I have to read it so I know what's going on.
Yeah, and there's another thing about, I'm just going to be talking about effects this whole episode. I say towards the end of the episode, because of the nature of analog effects and the way it's like glitching out on parts of the screen all the time, your brain tends to tune it out. So you so often are like, did that thing change? Oh no, it must have been an effect. Oh wait, no, it did. And with Mr. Know-It-All, because it's that clown face, it might be winking or its eyes are wider or it smiles, and that's the kind of thing where you're like, did I just see that?
Yeah.
Oh no, it must have been a glitch on the tape. Oh no, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh
it's
no,
there
it's
the
okay.
whole time too, so you get used to it, and then it changes.
Yep.
No. And according to
No, Mr. Know-It-All, no.
According to the Minerva Alliance lore, this video either kills the kids who watch it or makes them disappear, but has no effect on adults.
I like the disappear one more.
Yeah. I mean, there is that part where like the question is like, what is the color? Like, what's the name of the alert when children go missing? And the answer is amber.
Yeah.
Very scary. And then an unusual EAS alert is also really good, but I feel like I know we talked about slow burns and like not giving away too much. I feel like this one is like doesn't quite give enough away. Like we start to get into it. They say like no above ground shelter will protect you from this storm. I need one more thing. I need just one more piece.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I liked that one a lot. I think that again, it's kind of hemmed in by the nature of the format. Like what maybe I would have wanted to happen is like Arthur says something that's related to the thing, that's related to the storm or whatever, but that's so hard to pull off in a non-silly way, in a non kind of the end of you're on the fastest available route way.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, I would like to talk about, I think my favorite one besides Local 58, which is Gemini Home Entertainment.
All these names are so good.
They're good.
I'd like to there's something about analog horror that allows you to come up with great names and usually really good retro TV logos.
Oh, yeah. And the sounds, like I was doing the music at the beginning.
Yeah. Yep. Your perfect rendition.
My perfect rendition of the Local 58 music.
If you guys are wondering, that wasn't actually the local. I didn't insert the Local 58 music. Adam was actually doing it with his voice.
Me. So Gemini is an analog horror channel by Remy Abode. I'm sorry, Remy. I'm probably mispronouncing your last name. And these are VHS tapes instead of being a cable channel like many analog horror series. So these videos depict a world that is terrorized by various cryptids and monsters. A world where something went wrong, but we're not quite sure what exactly. Which I think it's good. Like there is an expanded universe of Gemini Home Entertainment, but we don't have to know about the other parts of the expanded universe to enjoy. Like I think Gemini really meets the best of both worlds in that sense of like there is an expanded universe, but you don't have to know about it to enjoy.
The and you don't.
Videos.
Yeah, and there's not a real need to know all of it.
Yeah,
like as in when you're watching it, you don't feel the need of I want to know every little thing and how it connects. It's like no, I just want to watch this thing.
Yeah. And also, so during the live stream, we watched Camp Information Video and Games for Kids. Camp Information Video was my first exposure to Gemini, so I really like it. And there's something that I really love, and I see this in all Gemini videos, that a lot of analog horror is a slow descent. You kind of get like little hints and blips until finally it all kind of falls apart. Gemini is like all normal, or if not a little off-putting, until like one wham line, and suddenly it is not normal.
It is a digital thing where it's just zero the whole way through, and then a square wave of spook.
Yeah, it's like
square wave of spook is actually one of the original names for this podcast.
For Camp Information Video, it's when they're talking about the activities and like hiking, canoeing, harvest, and then from the rest of it, it's scary.
That video has my favorite moment in any of these, which is
the door.
It keeps showing you this door with the knocking, and like that's super good and super spooky.
Scary.
And then at the end, in this like static frame that looks so static and like it's never going to change. Yeah, you think it's a picture. The door opens.
Scary.
That's so good.
And Games for Kids, I really love. I think it is set up so well. The music cutting out, and that's the same thing. Yeah. We get 1, 2, 3, bam. Not very normal. It's a little weird, but still pretty straightforward. We get what is it? It's like hide and seek, freeze tag, sardines, feed the woods.
Yeah, it's so good. Also,
and the music cuts out. They're like, here we go.
Yeah, and that one also has. I think there's another video that. Perhaps I'm just forgetting which one specifically it is, but it's the one that ends with the spiders.
Oh, yeah, that was from Eventide Media Center.
Yes. Eventide Media does the kind of FMV style, but Gemini also does something similar where there is usually some kind of odd like full on like special effects monster that shows up, although it is usually cloaked in shadow and is like the movement is really creepy, but very good.
A very different movement style than the rest of the videos in.
Right. It kind of feels like stop motion-y or
I was gonna say that
claymation-y
too.
in a really cool way. And the end of Games for Kids, it like pulls down this cop car in like such an interesting way. Oh, it's so
and
good.
I like that it doesn't dwell on it either. Like it doesn't show you extended. It goes 1, 2. That's all you're going to see of it.
Don't show
that's
us
all
the
you need to
monster.
see of it. And also the Games for Kids, the way that it ends with the picture of Earth and the arrow it says "found you," I think is very scary, and I like it a lot.
So good.
But yeah, in like general, this is a genre that I really enjoy, a genre that is really hitting its stride on YouTube right now. And like this is barely scratched the surface of what there is of this on YouTube. There's like literal like of just fake emergency alert system videos, like
so good.
hours.
Yeah.
So I invite everybody to go and like find your favorite ones. Go and discover, watch these like big channels, but then also go and watch the smaller. There's a bunch. We didn't talk about Event Type Media Center. We didn't talk about Channel 7. Like there's so many more. So go exploring, and find some.
Yeah, be sure to hit
stuff.
that like button and subscribe button. Hit the bell.
I mean,
to get notified whenever
real,
they make new
especially
videos.
for these small creators, support them.
Oh. Yeah, no, that's not a joke.
Yeah, a lot of these creators have Patreons too. I know Chris Straub has a Patreon. If you enjoy their content, subscribe to their Patreons.
Yeah, also tweet at Chris Straub and tell him to be on our show.
We haven't asked him, but
yeah, we should probably ask him. Yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. Episode 51 of The Great American Scream. We didn't even talk about it last week.
Over the hill.
But thank you guys so much. 51 dang episodes. I think like 45 of those have been over the past year.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy. And I'm so thankful. You know, there were a lot of podcasts started in the year 2020 because of a certain thing that happened. And 60% of them were not updating by November.
Is that a real statistic?
That's a real statistic.
Wow.
And we did it. We're still going.
We made it to 2021, and we wouldn't have made it 2021 if it wasn't for you guys tuning in, of course.
Yes, seriously. So much fun to not only hang out with my friend Adam, but engage with all of you guys on the internet and over analog too. Sometimes I know I have my old dial telephone. Sometimes you guys call in, and it's real fun. But it's a secret telephone number that you have to get through the ARG that's in the first 40 episodes and all the secret numbers.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for listening to this episode of The Great American Scream. If you enjoyed, please leave a rate and review if you listen on iTunes. If you're on Spotify, you can follow and share the episode or the show itself. Any other podcatcher, you can probably leave a rate and review. So please do that. It helps us out so much. If you're on Ghana, which is the Indian podcast service, thank you so much for listening. It's so great to see you guys.
We see you guys all the time on our stats and stuff.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Let us know where you listen and how we can make the podcast better for y'all as well. And if you're interested, we also have a Patreon where you can get some cool behind the scenes content. Adam posts his outlines. We do like polls for month's episodes, episode suggestions, and discussions about what direction we want the show to go in the future, because it is all about what you guys want to listen to. This show has changed so much in the past year in terms of our focuses and what we talk about, and that's because of y'all. So, Adam, can you pimp our social medias, please?
Yes, you check us out on Facebook at The Great American Scream, or more frequently on Twitter and Instagram at Great Scream Pod. Send us your favorite analog horror videos, channels we didn't talk about, videos we didn't talk about. Please send them to us. I love watching this kind of stuff. You can tweet at us or post using the hashtag TGAS. And as always, if you have a suggestion for something you want to hear about on the show, tweet it at us or send it to us, because your suggestion may become a topic for a future episode.
Yes, special thank you goes out to Michael Segudo, who does the disclaimer at the beginning, as well as Stevie Viola, who does the music for the intro and outro. You can find him on YouTube at Stevie Viola. His music is very good. Also, a special thank you goes out to our current patrons. That was my door. So thank you to Ben, Eric, Casper, Bree, Gail, Joyce, Brucker, Melinda, and Chris. I'd also like to shout out some of our friends in the horror podcast space. If you haven't yet, go and listen to Jar of Rebuke. Haunt Her, I Barely Know Her is very good. Friday the 13th horror podcast, also very good. Autopsy of a Horror Movie.
Less is Morgue. Georgie Romero's Dead.
So good. Listen to those. Wait, isn't it Georgie Romero is not dead?
Oops, what did I say?
I don't know, but if we mess up, all the stands are going to come for us. Let me just check it. Georgie Romero is done for. That poor guy. Oh my
God, what did I say? Why am I just making up names of these podcasts that don't exist?
We doomed Georgie Romero.
Georgie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but thank you to all of y'all. It's so fun to cross.
And go check out our friends over at Swampcast and the non-horror universe as well.
Yes. As well as Casper, who does Jar of Rebuke, has a non-horror podcast called The Queer Thespians. Check that out as well. Other than that, I have been Devin Wright.
I've been Adam O'Connell.
And hopefully you have been spooked.
Go feed the woods. Hey, but when you go feed the woods, do it safely.
There's no way to do it safely. You're feeding the woods.